What is it? Lights? Yeah, we'll get there in a minute.
Or actually, if you just want to say that's it, Councillor Bell's away on council business.
Are we there yet? Reaction. Come on, Neil. Yeah, we're just waiting on a plan. Yep.
Photos and see. That's yours, isn't it?
The other side got them? Yeah. Righto, good afternoon everyone. I'll declare the service delivery meeting open. Welcome the Mayor, fellow councillors, the staff, the press and any visitors. There's an apology from Councillor Bell on council business. There's also an apology from the Mayor who has to leave a bit early, and Councillor Brown has to leave a bit early. All those in favour that those apologies and leaving early, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Extraordinary business. I personally have one item of extraordinary business which I intend to bring up immediately after we've confirmed the minutes while the press is still here. You all got an email on the 18th of March about traffic flows through Ashburton. And as Chair of Service Delivery, I would like this out in the public domain so people can see what they are actually proposing regarding traffic flows through Ashburton. They're asking for comments, and I think if the public don't know, they can't comment.
I'll move that you accept the extraordinary business.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Declarations of interest. Confirmation of minutes. Any changes to page 1? Page 2 or 3? Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page number 3, item 6.18, the matter of road safety, it was my recollection that we talked about speed limits and that there was a discussion that we were going to review and act on a list that had been gathered by our roading manager. Am I recalling correctly?
No, I don't think you are. It was discussed and the roading manager said he wasn't activating that until he was hoping that NZTA or the government actually, it's been discussed that we changed from uneven like 70, 90s to 60, 80s. And Mr. Firth was concerned that we changed our speed limits round, we would have to change them all again. And is that correct, Mr. Firth, that we've sort of in a holding period until the government make up their mind, or an NZTA?
So, Councillor Wilson, I was aware of Mr. Firth's views. However, I think this matter came up, and it might be that I'm at the wrong agenda. I thought it came up at Policy and Bylaw and this one, and I can see our Policy and Bylaw advisor nodding at the back of the room that perhaps I've got the wrong agenda.
Thank you. Through the Chair. Yes, this was also discussed at the Bylaw and Policy Subcommittee, and the agenda that's coming out to you tomorrow includes a paper outlining a process going forward.
For the clarification.
Any alterations to our minutes? If not, somebody like to move, they be received. Thank you, Councillor Lovett. Seconded, Councillor Ronaldson.
Okay.
All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Extraordinary business. Those of you who got your tablets, if you haven't printed it, look up on the 18th of March. Basically, it says that they have been reviewing queuing in Ashburton and congestion for a year, which is not news to us, of course. And these are the people who is called Christchurch Transport Operations Centre, and Mr. Young is the team leader of real-time operations. The way I understand it, they've got cameras that watch the intersections, mainly the McDonald's corner, State Highway 1 and Methven Highway, and they can control the lights according to the queues or the congestion. Basically what they're saying here, the way I read it, if there is a lot of congestion, they will make the lights on State Highway 1 permanently green until congestion is relieved. It says flush out excessive traffic on State Highway 1 heading south. Well, for me that live in Tynwald, am I never being able to get across the main road or either way? And I think what they've forgotten, travelling north, the big hold up in Ashburton is a roundabout at Walnut Avenue. So if all the traffic lights are green through Ashburton, the total town will be completely blocked because they can't get through the roundabout quick enough. So I'd just like councillors, it says they want constructive feedback. Does we want to give feedback as a council or as individuals, or Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. I'm wondering if this could be shared with either the urban or the rural roading reference groups, because they're obviously people who are travelling on our roads all the time, and maybe they could give feedback either through to council or directly to NZTA.
Councillor Brown?
To give feedback, I think we would have to wait for an event to happen and let them do what they're going to do and see how well it works or doesn't, and then give the feedback. We've got Easter coming up, and it's generally a weekend that causes a bit of congestion. The Thursday night will probably be the one to watch. So after that, we might be able to see whether it's been worthwhile or not and give the feedback then.
It's a good idea. It came into effect on the 13th of March. So they said it's a trial period. Councillor Revley?
Yeah, I said this will compound. You're dead right. Walnut Avenue will become, because people know they can't get through West Street, go across West Street at Moore Street or Havelock Street. So what will they do? The first thing they'll do, rather than sit there for half an hour, they will go to the next one, and the roundabout rules will apply. So they've just created another bottleneck. So something has to be done, and another bridge would be quite useful no matter where it is. So all the original talk was it was local traffic causing the problem. We now know and it's good to see that the NZTA are admitting it's not local traffic. So the next line of negotiation should be a lot easier. So let's go not jump too quick, but don't be too far behind it. I would imagine within 1 month or 6 weeks we should be putting something quite constructive together as a council, because they are our people and the rest of the roads are part of what we do. So they can't stop business in Ashburton just because it's a busy day going to something at Dunedin or Christchurch.
That's a very good comment. Discussions on a second bridge, we were hammered hard that it was local traffic. That's why you needed a second bridge. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Who's going to be left the job of explaining to our residents of Ashburton that suddenly they're not going to be able to cross the road for maybe 10-minute periods because we've got to flush out the traffic that's travelling south or north? Who's going to tell them that? Because it'll be us getting the phone calls once they're queued up 200 yards back down South Street because those lights are not going to change. We're going to get, with no notice, have they got a plan around this for informing people that this is happening? I don't believe they have, and they're taking into no consideration into the ratepayers of this district and the impact it will have on them just solely through lack of communication. Because we'll have a large amount of traffic queuing up on the likes of Moore Street, South Street, and those sorts of things, and they'll have no idea what's happening.
the last sentence says, if there are any negative reactions or perverse driving behaviour created from this new action, please let me know. Councillor Lovett?
I was just wondering whether they're waiting for accidents to happen before they do anything, because I've just been watching this, especially at the Tunwald end of it, on the side streets now. There's 2 or 3 cars backed up, and people are taking risks getting out onto that road. Someone got clipped there about 4 days ago, and the other night on Moore Street there, I mean, I couldn't get round until about the 3rd set of light changes, so it is having a negative effect on us in town.
Councillor Braham?
Mr. Chair, you said it started the 13th of March, so it's been going for a week, and no one noticed it yet? You have. Well, I only found it today when I walked across the street, but otherwise I didn't see any problem yet. I'd like to just see where it's going for a couple of weeks. It would be quite good to put something in the papers and make sure that the people know what's happening, and it's not our decision. So, but let's give it a go, and if it works, it works. If not, we can make it well aware.
Thank you. I don't think it's continually. I think it's the idea is when we have those major weekends that backed up to Hines or backed up to way out to Fairton that they hope to. Councillor Ronson?
Yes, I can't say I've noticed it yet, but certainly when the first time we have a big event, or, you know, there's a big event in Dunedin or there's rugby, or even a Friday afternoon is probably going to be the first test, because from about 2 o'clock on a Friday, our traffic is noticeably greater and banked up in both directions. So I guess maybe Friday might be the first time we really see the long-term green light going through. But certainly for Tunwald or anywhere else, it's going to be a major problem accessing it if you've got to sit there for 10 or 12 minutes and wait. However, I guess we do have to adopt a wait and see to realise what the benefits or their non-benefits are.
Councillor Price?
Thank you. I'd just like to follow up on the idea of communication, because this came into effect last Wednesday. We got the email to tell us about it on the following Monday. We're more than a week into the trial, and nobody in the public have been informed. So can we somehow follow this up with NZTA? I don't think it's partially our job, but I think NZTA have a huge responsibility to let people in this district know what's going on.
I don't think it's NZTA, it's the Christchurch Transport Operations Centre. It's the man in Christchurch that controls the light. I'm not sure, I suppose he works under the NZTA. Yes, he does, yes.
Yes, the email came through John Keenan by the looks of it, so yes.
Councillor Urquhart?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Councillor Price. We've got to let the people know, otherwise we'll get the brunt of it. I also believe we need to let it run a while so that we can prove that it probably won't work, and Easter weekend is probably the major weekend that'll prove that, and then we've got a bit of hard evidence again.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. So John Keenan, who is mentioned in this email, is actually a regular attendee, is my understanding, at our road safety meeting, but perhaps Councillor McMillan could confirm, yes. So perhaps when John next comes, he could help us understand the poor communication as well. Our roads do interface into state highways, which is NZTA's responsibility, and there will be an impact on us, but I absolutely support the suggestion that communication should have been far better, and I thought that having a member of NZTA on our Road Safety Committee would have given us an opportunity for a heads up, so I am disappointed that we didn't know about it beforehand.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, and just to let you know, our next road safety meeting is not until the 7th of May.
Councillor Rawlinson?
I think that our district council should write to Ray Young, as he is, Ray Young from District Team Leader, Real-Time Operations at NZTA, and express our concern that we had no prior notice of this, and therefore the public of Ashburton are going to be struggling to understand these long delays accessing the highway and think it's our fault. So I believe we should, as a council, or the CE, someone should be writing to them expressing concern at the lack of prior knowledge.
Through the chair, we can certainly do that, and we could also ask for more information in terms of how long the trial is going to take, and once the trial is done, if they can report back to us on the results of the trial, because they'll be monitoring the trial during this period, and it would be interesting to get the results of that for us, I'm sure.
Just,
Councillor Ellis?
thank you, Mr Chairman. And just with that, could they give an indication of what they expect maybe the longest flush period might be? Is it 5 minutes, which is probably not too dramatic, but if it starts to stretch to 10 or 15 minutes, that could be quite significant.
Yeah, I believe that's exactly what they're looking at in the trial. They are monitoring it and trialling different lengths of time and gaps and queuing. So hopefully they can provide data to give us that sort of idea of what's best and etc.
Councillor Reveley?
Yeah, I think we needed this message out there because we don't want our staff taking all the nasty calls. We don't need to see when the railway line didn't work and other things don't work. It's our council staff that we're, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? The lights in our town, to many people, belong to council. So we don't want to clog our front desk up, front call centre up. We need the message out there that this is a trial and we're all going to have to put up with it until it's resolved.
Right, last comment for Madam Mayor. I think we've had a fair discussion.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I appreciate Mr McCann's suggestion of trying to understand what the data looks like. I'm wondering if it's possible that we could also have previous data for what it looked like before it was introduced. Thank you.
Well, do you want a motion or can you do it without?
I'll certainly follow up with that and report back next committee meeting and with hopefully more information on the trial.
Thanks, Mr McCann. Right. Item 5.1, Beach Road Water Main Extension. Welcome, Mr Guthrie. Any question? This is question, not debating. This is questions of Mr Guthrie regarding the report. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Mr Chairman. Looking at the, Andy, at the results, and I'm looking at the support for the proposal, there was 11 properties who supported it. And there were 16 properties altogether, but only 11 responses were received. So does that mean 100 of the people who responded, 100% wanted it?
Yeah, so of the people that responded, they all supported the extension.
Yep.
But in real terms, only 2 connections are basically being connected at the time. 2 properties being connected at the time.
Straight away?
Straight away.
The others want to delay? Or
They want to delay it over some period of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Have we got a policy regarding subdivision people putting in water mains at their own expense, at our expense, or what's the policy regarding? I know Buckley's Terrace, we extended it, but there was already residential C and there were houses there waiting to use it. What's our policy regarding new subdivisions like this?
Well, the reality is we don't have any hard and fast policy. Each of the extensions that have occurred in the last few years have all been a wee bit unique. You mentioned Buckley's Terrace. That was a situation where you had a lot of existing properties still on bore, and they were quite small size sections. And they approached council for that extension. We've had the ones out at the Tates Road area, Glassworks Road. Those ones were driven by concerns over bores going dry. And again, we sort of cut the cloth to suit the request that was coming in from the property owners. And for a large extent, that works fairly well.
Any further? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, if I can follow on, Mr. Chair. So those ones were done. The cost was paid by who? The ratepayers or council? Or shared? Okay, so the Buckley's Terrace one, I think there's only 2 connections that haven't been paid for, and they will be recovered from those properties when they do finally connect. So council is acting as a banker for those 2. And a similar approach has been used for Wilkins Road. There's a wee bit of extra capacity there, which council's funding. And the same applies to the Tates Road, North Park Road one. So council is acting as banker for these. And I'd have to say, if the support
if the number of connections that were going to come online were going to come in sooner, I would probably make the case for it to happen here as well. But the slight difficulty with this one is the fact that the divisor that we're talking about is 40 properties. The reason we have such a high divisor is because of there's a section about 400 metres of zone C, residential C zoned land, which allows for a lot higher density development. We've got nothing on the books at this stage that would suggest that's going to happen anytime soon. So although the divisor is quite high, there's 40 properties, that may not be utilised in the near future.
My question, is it correct that where I live, the Tarbotton subdivision, it was paid completely by the subdivider?
Yeah, that's right. So the Tarbottons Road development included a creation of a new subdivision, a new cul-de-sac and urban lots in that area. It also included some residential D development land. And in order to get the firefighting for that development, the developer effectively had to supply everything. It was just built entirely by the developer.
Councillor Urquhart?
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman to Mr. Guthrie. Yeah, I believe unless the beneficiaries of this are going to pay a major portion, the recommendation is what we require to stand by. We've got to keep it reasonably fair.
Hang on, we're just in questions, Alistair. We're not debating it quite yet. I know you're almost getting to debate.
Okay. My question is, do you think there's a fair playing field if we did go ahead with this?
Yeah, good, that's good.
I think the part of me would like to support extensions where we can. I think it's part of our duty to try and extend the network and provide potable water to bigger areas possible. The difficulty I have here as an officer is that we are going to be being a banker for this capacity for a long time, and that's really why I didn't feel comfortable recommending it.
Right. Any further questions? Would somebody like to move? Councillor Brown.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I certainly will move the recommendation as it stands.
Seconder?
And I'll second
Councillor Urquhart. The motion is open for discussion. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask, shouldn't we be forward-thinking with the government's looking at the Three Waters policy, and that we may, in the future, they'll be looking at the quality in the bores, because people have to have good quality water, and if you're going to have all these sewage, tanks there and people trying to put bores down for water, there's going to be contamination issues, and like these bores are shallow because they're expensive to do. And at one point when you've got people putting down bores of their own because of the costs, they won't want to come on to the town water supply, which I can quite, understand. Should we, that's where I'm coming, should we be more forward-thinking and start the process with that view, and perhaps with some temporary lines or something, and then redo a bigger development when the rest of it goes into subdivision?
Through the chair, so the difficulty we have is that if we were to make this a public main, we have to provide a certain size main to provide that firefighting. So it's not a case of being able to take something smaller down the road. It's a very valid point you raise about the proliferation of shallow bores around the urban area. They will become an issue for us in the future. But I say again, in this particular instance, I'm struggling to justify the expenditure. It's a lot of money which the existing ratepayers will have to carry until such time as it would be recovered.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and I understand what you're saying there, Andy, and I do agree with you. But it's a little bit chicken and egg, because I think once you run the water past these people's property and they suddenly get charged the half rate anyway because it's only going past, and even though they're not using it, may incentivise them also to do something, or if they have any issue with their current supply at all, they'll probably very quickly jump on. So I think you might find if the water was there, those timeframes could come back. But unfortunately, that's crystal ball gazing, and we don't know that as a certainty. But yeah, it's one I could probably go either way on, to be fair.
Councillor Brown?
It's more of a question, but to Andy, the ratepayers you consulted with and who are going to hook up in X number of years' time, do they know, if the pipe did get put in, do they know they'll get a half charge?
Yeah, so through the chair, when we consulted with them, we provided a little questions and answers sheet which included that information. So they were aware of the implications of the proceeding. That included some information about water metering and what have you as well. So they had enough information to make a reasonably informed decision.
So if the pipe did go through, then the half charge would would pay something towards the pipe until they joined fully.
It wouldn't pay back the capital cost. The half charge is obviously that's a rate. That's part of the operational. So I suppose you're right. They're making a contribution to the interest bearing component of that. But certainly the capacity is still there waiting to be paid back for.
And if they did connect, then they'd get a connection fee which would have been inflation proofed?
Yeah, that's the intention of the, if we were going down the path of extending, yes.
Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, it could be 40 lots. So on the moment, what is it, five blocks or 6 blocks? So we won't get 40,
No, so the current number of properties, parcels is 16 at the moment.
16 is the total,
Yeah.
so it could become 50 or 40. Yeah, thank you.
No further discussion? Well, the motion is 5.1.2 is not progressed at this time. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Show of hands. Those in favour of the motion, please raise their right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh.
And actually, Mr. Chairman, could I remind you, it's not just the mayor who has the casting vote, it's the chairman of the committee.
The chair has
It's
to
not a
go
casting
with
vote.
the status quo. With the status quo.
Yeah, it's not a casting vote. It's not tied. You haven't voted.
Yes, I
Yes,
did.
he did.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
We're one
Thelma's
short.
Way.
Councillor Bell's not here.
And Mr. Chairman, no, there is no obligation to go with the status quo.
I shall vote in favour of the recommendation, as it's the staff recommendation that encourages me to go with what the staff recommend. So the motion is passed. Doesn't mean to say that the developer can come back in 12 months and say, I've got 20 properties, and because, I mean, at the moment, there's only 2 want the connection.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify, the words I just heard you say, it does not mean that the developer can come back. What you meant was it doesn't mean he can't.
Yes.
He's absolutely
Of
entitled
course
to come
he is,
back.
yes, of course he is, yes, yep. 5.2, terms of reference. Welcome, Tony and Richard. Any questions of the 2 council officers here? Remember, don't discuss the thing. This is questions of what they've written. Sorry to stifle the discussion.
So,
Council-
Mr.
Madam
Chairman,
Mayor.
yesterday I understand why you are differentiating between questions and deliberation, and I was at the meeting where we had that discussion yesterday. However, I think you and I took different messages from it. What I heard was from our chief executive that he is quite familiar with questions being part of the deliberation, and that the delineation that we have used in the past is not something he has experienced before. I was going to take the reverse approach at future meetings, that questions are part of deliberation. But the reason I have my light on, sir, is for the officers, please. And in the terms of reference that are outlined on page 11, I see that Forest and Bird New Zealand are listed, but they are not part of the recommendation. And also in the recommendation, we have Bar Hill Chertsey irrigation, and they are not listed in the terms of reference. And I'm just seeking clarification, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is what is known as a human error. When I originally prepared the report, the intention was to recommend that the membership of the group includes 6 parties, not including Bar Hill Chertsey and including Forest and Bird. As the report was progressing through the process of feedback from leadership team and elsewhere, the message came back that it was important to include Bar Hill Chertsey because they're a potential partner in project trial sites, and so in the interest of keeping the group at a membership of 6, because we wanted to ensure that this group was able to move quickly, the decision was made to withdraw Forest and Bird from the list and to include Bar Hill Chertsey. What is recommended on page 9 is the officer's advice, and what is on page 11 is an error, because one was corrected and the other was not. And while I'm on the subject of confessing my errors, I should also note there's a number of references to Arawhenua Consulting, Environmental Consulting, which of course is Aoraki Environmental Consulting.
Thank you, Richard.
Supplementary to that, please. So just seeking clarification, please. The consideration to no longer include Forest and Bird New Zealand as part of the 6 for speedier decision making. How much longer do we think one additional party would add to the process? What detriment do you think 7 parties would be as opposed to 6?
I think it's fair to say that 6 is an arbitrary call. My recollection, however, from the discussion when the surface water strategy was adopted was that we had a number of submitters who said to the effect, we've been talking about this for 7 or 8 years, we need to make this go faster. And when the councillors debated what they heard in submissions, many of you echoed those sentiments and repeated them, and those of you that were silent on it certainly did not express any disagreement. So officers took a very clear message from council that making action on the implementation of the surface water strategy, and this is a very important part of it, was a high priority. So when officers were discussing the membership, our focus was keep the group as small as practicable, recognising that there may be people outside the 6 that will be able to provide input at different times. But I think I'm reminded of the adage of a former deputy mayor of Oamaru who maintained that the most efficient committee was a committee of 2 with 1 absent. I can't give you a number and say, look, with 7 people it's 4% less efficient, but we were just trying to capture the message from council and keep this group tightly focused.
Councillor Malcolm.
I may have another one. All right. Yes, through Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I was just wondering the rationale between for having Fish and Game on there. We're talking stock water races here mainly, right? Fish and Game don't really operate in stock water races. Okay, so that's my question.
Primarily the reason for choosing both Fish and Game and Forest and Bird initially was to ensure that there was adequate representation of environmental interests, because the surface water strategy talks about all the values of our surface water, including environmental values. In choosing between Fish and Game and Forest and Bird, I'm mindful that Fish and Game were a submitter to the surface water strategy, and there were other groups, I think, who submitted also had concerns around things like fish screening and so on.
Councillor Reveley?
Yeah, question here. Have the staff looked at the Ashburton District Council document passed in 2014 of stock water being delivered by the irrigation network? We have a document out passed in 2014 looking at went right through to the process. In 2014 we passed the document of putting water in those pipes. What reference did you make to that document?
I'm sorry, Councillor Reveley, I'm not familiar with the document you're referring to.
Well, I believe we're a lot further down the track in what we're looking here. That 2014 document went through some consultation and was passed. And what we were looking at that stage, we were still negotiating the delivery, but also the transfer of water or how it was going to be paid for. So we're a lot further through. We seem to be taking 4 steps back. I've been here damn near 15 years, and this looks like another backward step. So I would like to think that we had the input of that document firmly entrenched before we go too much further here. I've just taken it out of my bag today, put it in. I should have brought it back. I produced it for the Chief Executive the other day to show him that document existed.
Perhaps Mr Guthrie could answer that for us, could you?
Look, I just want to make a few comments on that. I know the report you're talking about. That was very high level and conceptual, from my recollection. The purpose of this technical group is to actually broker a trial. That was what was offered to us by Ashburton Interest, and certainly since then, the Bar Hill Churnsey. So my understanding was this technical group was to oversee implementing this trial. I still think this is the best mechanism to do that.
So in amongst what we're talking about, another question is, do you have any idea how many BCI now are supplying stock water out of an irrigation pipe?
No, I don't have that information. I would say it's a lot more than they were 3 to 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's large numbers now. I just see we seem to be almost taking a step back. So I'd like that document to have some relevance, because I'm really struggling when we're putting the pipes are out there, the water can be delivered. It's a very simple job. All we need to be doing is negotiating with the companies to work out what they are and whether the people are going to be part of being ADC delivery, or they can become a shareholder of a company. And Ashburton District Council passed them over and what the water swap was or what the charges were. I think we should be down that line, because water's been in these pipes for a while. The water's been delivered in many areas in the upper part of the district by these pipes now. And I think until we get to the point of finalising some of this stuff, the Fish and Game should be reasonably happy, because there will be spare stock.
Mr Reveley, you're getting into debating, I'm afraid. We're supposed to be in question time. And to be fair to Mr Maben, he hasn't been here that long and he's really starting to drive things. So, as you're correct, Councillor Reveley, we've been talking about it for years. So let's throw the bathwater out.
Point of clarification though, we held those surface water strategies meetings and this recommendation came out of that, which Councillor Reveley was excluded from because he presented to that at that time. So he wasn't involved in the debate council had around bringing this forward, and this is what we asked to come forward as a council.
That's correct. Councillor Brown, have you got a question?
I have a question, and I'm looking at the purpose. The purpose of this group, is it to, as I read it, look at one or more trials for the delivery of stock water through the irrigation company infrastructure? That's the purpose. And I can't see where anyone who's not involved in a irrigation company needs to be on this group, because they can't deliver. So that's questioning, is that the purpose that's written here? And if it is, then I'll be moving a recommendation, but it won't be the one that's here.
Councillor Ronson.
Thank you,
You've got a question?
Yes, I do have a question.
Oh, you got a supplementary.
The purpose, what is the purpose? What we read here in 1.2E.
to improve the efficiency of water use, to improve water quality, and to better understand the impacts on overall water race values. And the reason for including AEC and Fish and Game and ECAN is really connected with that third leg of the stool about better understanding the impacts on overall water race values. At some point, we need to understand if water is delivered through irrigation infrastructure and is not being delivered through the races, what happens in terms of the biodiversity in those races and the ecological values and the cultural values associated with that. The group is going to need to select trial sites, and they're going to want, I believe, some input from people with knowledge of those environmental and ecological and cultural values to ensure that they can get an effective and successful trial and can evaluate the results. So I believe, in short, that what I have recommended is fit for purpose.
A supplementary question, Councillor Brown.
Those environmental things you talk about are other actions in the strategy. On their own, they are there. We are those members of the Aoraki Environmental Fish and Game Environment Canterbury would be involved in those other ones. Just for this trial, I think it would be just the people with the actual equipment who can deliver it.
Councillor Rollinson.
Thank you. My question is regarding MVH. To me, they're missing off the list. But are they going to be disappointed that they're not part of this? They were the three, well, they've got Ashburton and Lyndhurst and Bar Hill Chertsey, and MVH were the third irrigation company that expressed a desire to see this happen, with Mel Brooks presenting at that hearing. So I've just wondered, my question was, why were they not included? Because they're a major player.
Thank you. Hello. It was my recollection, and I stand to be corrected, I've already on record as owning up to at least 2 errors in this report. It was my understanding and recollection from the presentations that we heard from Rebecca Willens from ALIL that they had identified particular options that they wanted to trial. I heard something very similar from a gentleman from Bar Hill Chertsey whose name temporarily escapes me, and is it John Wright? Yep. And but I don't recall. I certainly recall that MVH were submitters, but I didn't recall them identifying that they had specific pilot opportunities that they wanted to pursue. I believe that if in the course of identifying a preferred trial site, that we identified, for example, or that the group identified, that there was an opportunity for a trial service by MVH, that you would bring MVH in because they would clearly need to be involved. It was just that, so the reason that they weren't named specifically was simply because the other two had identified sites.
Councillor Price.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I've got to say I'm really quite confused because I'm struggling to understand whether this is, I guess my question is this a governance thing or is this a technical group? And if it's purely about trialling the physical ability to deliver stock water through irrigation pipes, then surely that's something that we can just have the technical people involved with from the irrigation company, from ADC. But if we're going to then bring in the latter part of that purpose, which is to better understand impacts on overall values, then I would see it as we need a comprehensive list of members. So is it a governance issue or is it a technical issue?
Good question.
I believe that first and foremost this is a technical issue, and I would disagree with your observation that consideration of the impacts on environmental and cultural values is not in the first instance a technical issue, because those folk do have, you know, the environmental science is a science, it has technical aspects. Making judgments at the end of a trial in terms of future action about balancing one set of values versus another, governance. But conducting a trial and bringing back the results, technical.
Councillor Brown,
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'm going to move the recommendation.
hang on, we've got a question.
Can I have a
Oh,
supplementary?
sorry, Councillor Price.
So if it's technical but you want to include environmental plus cultural, then I'm really struggling to understand why we would exclude one group and not the other. Because to me it doesn't seem either comprehensive nor balanced. We're taking out an environment, a group that has expertise in environmental values, but we are keeping in both of the irrigation companies. Why don't we take one of them out as well?
At this point, my advice to you, if you consider that the membership is not well balanced, is given that the terms of reference talks about a trial or trials, and given that there are 2 irrigation companies that have identified trial opportunities, I think I would rather you brought in Forest and Bird than took out one of the irrigation companies, because I think you might well find you want to bring them back in. So,
Madam Mayor, you got a question?
I have.
Last question, then we can't go
Last
on.
question, a couple of parts. The information you have from the outtake of the BCI put in at Mitcham Road for the council, which serves the 1 or 2 farmers that are not on it, and it continues down the road. What evidence do you have of that one? And the BCI, which have been running stock water now for, 8 or 10 years, are you going to dig any of the information that they've got? They hold a pretty big piece, but what information did you manage to receive from our water department on the Mitcham Road outfall of piping? Because they converted some Acton water for stock water.
I am but a humble strategy and policy analyst, and while I imagine that this group will want to look at that level of information in terms of preparing a report to you on establishing the membership of this group and the work it will do, I did not go into that detail.
Fair enough. I've asked enough questions, I think, now. It's time we debated it. Councillor Brown, have you?
I'm going to move the recommendation 5.2.2, and I'm going to start with number 3. And it is
Well, perhaps we should start at number 1, because number 1 actually is Appendix 1, which names...
If number 3 changes, then number 1 will change too.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So start with number 3, and MHV, RDR, Acton Irrigation Company, Ashburton Lyndhurst Irrigation Limited, Bahul Chertsey Irrigation Limited, be invited to nominate their representatives on the Water Race Network Advisory Group. And that's what I move, and I'll speak to it. Oh, ADC is in, Mr. Councillor Reveley talked about ADC, is in number 2. I don't propose to change number 2. They would, oh, I haven't, okay, you second, I'll speak to it.
Could you just perhaps run through them so you've got...
MHV.
MHV.
RDR. ML they call it. Acton Irrigation Limited. Ashburton Lyndhurst Irrigation Limited. Bahul Chertsey Irrigation Limited. Be invited to nominate their representative on the Water Race Network Advisory Group. Councillor Review seconded. I don't see a need for Aoraki Environmental, Central South Island Fish and Game or ECAN. This is a technical trial using infrastructure that is there now. Those other 3 groups don't have any infrastructure. What value can they add to a delivery of stock water to the farmers? Acton Irrigation, why they're there, they're already doing it. They're delivering stock water, and so is BCI to farmers now. Perhaps there's expertise they have which they could share with the group. That's why they're there. Richard talks about having a balanced members on there. If it's a technical advisory group, you don't need balance. Governance, yes, you need balance. Technical advisory, doing the work, you need everyone on the same page, so to speak. So that is why I've recommended that for number 3. Councillor Revley probably jumped the gun, because number 1, the terms of reference and delegations, that will change as the members of the group change. So somehow that needs to be captured, that if number 3 changes, then number 1 changes, but number 2 stays the same.
Councillor Price?
I'd just like to ask a question with regard to Appendix 1. Does that mean then when we look at purpose, we're just going to look at to investigate one or more trials for delivery of stock water through irrigation company infrastructure to improve efficiency of water use, full stop? Okay.
And perhaps improve water quality, full stop.
I'm not sure that's part of it, is it?
But that,
If we're not going to look at environmental values, I don't think water quality might come in there either.
Madam Mayor?
Mr Chairman, I wish to speak against the recommendation. I appreciated the work that the officer had done. I appreciated the fact that there had been some consideration to groups who would be expressing a view on our ecosystems and our biodiversity. I hear the recommendation. I am not in support of having a water race network advisory group that is solely focused on irrigation company infrastructure, on water use, without looking at the other side of the equation, which is the environmental impacts. So I will not be supporting the recommendation.
Councillor Brahm?
Mr. Chair, I'm the same. I won't take the motion from Councillor Brown.
Councillor Revley?
Well, I see the motion as being useful in the system.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. Did Councillor Revley not second the motion, and has he now not lost his right to speak?
If he makes he's allowed to speak to it, but once he's done it, that's his
By
right
having
to speak.
Acton and BCI have been doing this for a good while. Not having them at the table will speed this process up. When it comes back to the table, no water will be shifting. The trial work that we're talking about here, Acton and BCI have already done this successfully for, well, BCI down my road, 10 years. I think Acton would be almost the same, if not a little bit more. And then you've got the scheme, the secondary scheme which the council are running via BCI. But that's been going for 6 years successfully too. Most of what we're talking about is things that are actually happening. The trial work's been done by these people. So we're a lot further down the track, and we'll come back to the council, and then you'll put the other people in to make sure that what we're doing is right. There will be water to release, and these other people will be quite happy with what it is. So to have polluted water, or water of lesser quality and against high quality going to the river. So I see the loss of those, by not having all those companies there and using their expertise and giving it back to council. They're not going to make the decisions. Council's still going to make the decision. We're just speeding the process up of getting there.
Councillor Price, you've already spoken to the motion, so technically,
I asked a question.
after the motion was put,
I did ask a question after the motion was put. I was clarifying the motion. I was clarifying the first point of the motion.
well, I'll let you over this time then.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will also be opposing this because I think to move forward without any involvement on any water matter without the involvement of Aoraki Environmental Consultancy would be a slap in the face to them and would be very dangerous to our relationship with them. I think we need to really clarify what it is we're wanting this working group to do, advisory group rather.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you, and I also will not be supporting. I don't see how it will speed up the process, because I believe we'll do that step, And then we'll have to go back to do what we were going to do if we involved everyone in the first place, because they are going to want to have their say and be involved in it. So if we do that up front, I believe we will get a more balanced view that will come back to us, and it will actually end up speeding up the process because we won't have to do it twice.
Sorry, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I won't be supporting it either because I think we do need a balance, but I'm also just wondering, Councillor Brown named the 5 different irrigation companies. Would it be worth getting them in as a group and asking them to nominate 2 of their representatives to then go on to this board, if you're saying that Acton and BCI have had a lot of experience in it?
Any further speakers? Right a reply, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, obviously support the motion, but the RDR needs to be in this because the water's going to go down their infrastructure. The MHV needs to be part of this. They've got the infrastructure. Acton Irrigation is already doing it. Leaving them out seems like a no-brainer. Putting them in seems like a no-brainer. If you vote down the recommendation, then we need to put some more names in there and have the group bigger than Ben Hur and probably unworkable.
Right, final speaker. The motion reads, as you've all heard, the 6 irrigation companies plus the council's representative who will be the assets manager. That will be 7 in the group, 6 irrigation companies and ADC. All in favour of the motion, please say aye. Contrary? No. Show of hands, please. Those in favour of the motion, raise their right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll declare the motion passed. Well, 5 plus RDR. That was the 6 that Councillor Price.
Mr Chair, because you've made no amendment to section 1 of this, you've actually passed a motion with membership that is stacked full of irrigation companies, but you haven't changed the actual the wording of Appendix 1. I think you've got a problem.
No, thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Brown, when he moved his motion, specifically stated that by changing the members of number 3 in the recommendation would also flow over into Appendix 1. And
Sorry, no, point of order, it's not obvious.
It's certainly not obvious.
Right, I'll ask this minute taker or the... Have you got a copy of exactly the way that Councillor Brown... Order, please.
Councillor Brown
suggested that MHV, RDR, Acton Irrigation, Ashburton Lyndhurst Irrigation and Byhill Chertsey have it be changed.
Who become the members of the group, which flows over into membership on Appendix 1. They are the members of the group, so they flow over. Those other members that are on there now, indicative, drop off.
Including ADC?
ADC is covered in point 2.
Yes, as Chair, that's the way that I heard the motion moved, so...
And the purpose? Are we going to amend the wording of the purpose as well?
It wasn't suggested. It was discussed, but it wasn't.
I don't think you can claim to have the purpose to better understand impacts on overall values when you've taken out every other group that's involved in the other values, cultural, environmental and social.
Councillor Price, the motion has been passed, so that's the end of discussion. We can't go back once the motion is passed, that's it. Mr. CEO?
Point of order, when motion was...
Hang on,
no.
hang on, hang on.
Okay.
Something's not right here.
Hamish wants to...
I respect that the motion's been passed. One of the things that at the conclusion of this meeting we will need to do is to give some thought to whether that motion gives effect to the surface water strategy, which was the purpose of setting up the working group. So we respect that motion's passed, but we will need to give some further thought to where that leaves our surface water strategy, of course, which was also passed, and contemplated a trial reflecting all the matters that were in that surface water strategy. So I acknowledge we've taken a step today, but it will cause us to need to reflect on where we've got to in relation to our also passed surface water strategy.
Councillor Ellis?
Point of order. Councillor Brown made it very clear when he moved, he was moving item 3. I believe that is all I've approved so far is item 3. I have not done 2 yet, which is obviously clear cut, we will do 2, but item 1 we haven't touched. He moved item 3, took the list backwards. That's now the motion that I lost. The changes, some of them, yes, now automatically flow to what's in number 1, but if we can want to make some other changes, I believe we're free to debate that right now.
The chairman asked me when I was moving the motion, should you not do one
Point of order.
first?
Point of
Point of
order
order,
has been
Councillor-
made, the chair has to rule on.
I beg your pardon?
The point of order has already been made, the chair is required to rule on it, another member cannot speak.
Yes. The way I heard it, and I'm sure that's what the secretary has taken, Councillor Brown moved to change the members in number 3 of the recommendation. And he also said, naturally, it will flow over into the Appendix 1. Therefore, the members in Appendix 1 that are named in Appendix 1 will become the 6 names that were nominated in Appendix 3. He didn't move the motion as 1, 2 and 3. He moved the motion as one motion. Naturally, it included 1, 2 and 3. If you wanted to subdivide the motion, you asked to pass it in 3 sections. We passed it as one motion. Councillor,
As the point of order...
so I rule the point of order out of order. Councillor Price.
So I'd like to ask the secretary to read the wording of the first part of the Appendix 1, which is purpose.
Correct.
As stated by Councillor Brown.
Councillor Price, the purpose has not changed. The only thing that changed in the appendix was membership. Councillor Brown?
You're correct with that, but that group now doesn't represent all the points in the purpose.
That is a matter of opinion.
Correct.
The motion was passed by the majority of councillors, so that's... once the motion's passed, it's passed. The only way you can do it is to come to the next meeting with a number of councillors who wish to revoke the motion.
Thank you for that, but could my name be put against this motion? Thank you.
I would like my own vote recorded as well, please.
For those that want to have their names recorded as voting against the motion, that's the Mayor, Councillor Ellis, Councillor Price, Councillor McMillan, Councillor Brown. No, it's passed, it's passed, yep. 5.3. Thank you, Richard. You have to follow. But he moved that as one. He moved it as one thing. Did he? Yes, he did. Otherwise, we.
But if he did it as one,
He
then
did
you're
it
right.
as one, that's it,
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Councillors, any questions to Mr Firth, please? If not, thank you, Councillor Ellis. You move the
I'll move the
recommendation.
recommendation 5.3.2 as written.
Seconded, Councillor Malcolm. Any discussion? If not, all in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. And they'd like to move activity. Councillor Brown seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Mr McCann, perhaps answer questions on the library, museum.
Yeah, through you, Mr Chair, if you can just take it as read, if there's anything from there, it's just an activity report, nothing more to add.
Just say the books at the Children's Day were gone a bit after 1 o'clock. Jonathan had an absolutely brilliant day, met lots more people, and they said, well, have you got these sorts of books? So he had a brilliant day there right up till, we're supposed to finish at 2:30, he was still there at 3:30 talking to kids and everything else. So it really was a brilliant day for him. And the books disappeared because he went and got some that were left over at the Rotary tent, and they went as well. So, but he met a lot of children, where do you come from, where you fit in. So as far as advertising, he couldn't have done much better.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. I don't know if it can be answered, but the Dig in Mahi Mara exhibition, which I thought was excellent, I just wanted to know how many people, if it was recorded, how many people actually visited that. I've heard so many stories of how great it was, and I thought it was excellent. So
I can try to get those figures for you. Yep.
6.3 EA Network Centre. Councillor Lovett.
For a minute, just going back to the Bertie Challenge. In the future, just the advertising of this program going forward, can they advertise it a lot better? Because it was only at a youth council meeting, and we had the guy from the museum here talking to us, and we just, it's a fantastic challenge, and that's when we first knew exactly how widespread that was, and could they, get it out there better in the public for the kids to join up? It's fantastic.
Yeah, through the chair, we certainly will be putting in more planning up front now and doing more in communication. Certainly that has been identified and will be done next time for the next holidays.
And I just have a question about EA Network Centre. In the future, the Tynwald pool, it was closed due to the lack of lifeguards, and people went, I know my daughter and all ended up at the pool to find a notice on the gate that it was shut on one very hot day. The lack of lifeguards, someone was sick. How are you going to address that in the future? Because it's not actually, I don't think, really good.
Yeah, it's a real problem we've had this year in particular, and a lot of sicknesses as well, and some of those lifeguards we've only been aware of being sick on that morning, so it's been very unfortunate we haven't been able to get the message out sooner. But as soon as we do know beforehand, we have put up the signs and put it on a Facebook if we are aware a day or two before. Unfortunately, there were a few instances where our lifeguards reported sick on the morning, which was just rather unfortunate, but we can only do our best.
No more comments. 6.4, open spaces. Welcome, Mr Askin. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Price.
Not so much a question, but I would just like to highlight the resignation of Alan Totty from the Biodiversity Working Group. He was a previous chair under the last term of council, and his work has been excellent, and I just wanted to acknowledge that.
There was also an open day at Staveley campsite 10 days ago. There was quite a crowd there. They were shown what they were doing as far as biodiversity there too. So, parks, public conveniences. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I've got a lot of questions today. Will this be a new build or will it be an extension of the current toilets?
No, the intentions is it will be a completely new build.
Cemeteries, very impressive gates going up. No more questions. Stockwater. Councillor Malcolm.
Here through you, Mr Chairman, to David, I'd just like to congratulate you. It's been a harrowing season for some people, including Mr Harrow at Overdale, who rings me regularly through not having any water. Hopefully we can alleviate his problems if he can include himself into the Bar Hill Chertsey system.
I've got a question. How many race closures are in progress at the moment and what stage are they at?
I can't tell you off the top of my head how many are in progress. Probably in the vicinity of 3 that I know of.
And are we able to keep them within the time limit that we state in our protocol?
We try to. We do have problems. We've got one very long one that we're dealing with at present and still waiting for surveys to come back on that particular race. The other ones, I think, are reasonably in the time frame.
The other question I've got, we're moving into the Stockwater strategy. Have we got an exact figure of how many races we've got, who are open, who are shut, who are being closed in the past, and who are getting stock water that haven't been registered as having races? Is there any way we can do an audit of actually where the stock water is and where it comes from and who gets it?
That's a pretty hard question to answer because there is a lot of work to be done in that question. We are doing some audits at present. We've got a long list of audits to do to get done by the 1st of July for the changeover rates. But every time we look at a closure, we find some different information.
Yes. Councillor Brown?
That audit is in the surface water strategy, knowing who's on and who's off. It's in the strategy.
No further comments. Solid waste. Welcome, Craig. Did he get his? Didn't get his.
You couldn't get the drone footage done, so we've got photos instead. So Craig can just, if he wants to just touch on.
I think, talking to Mr McCann yesterday, we were hoping to give you a live drone coverage of the park, but it hasn't eventuated. Welcome, Craig. Got some photos here for us. Perhaps you could explain to the councillors what they mean.
Pardon me. Yeah, as you know, it's been pretty crazy lately. So we're doing some, we're doing a bit of capex work up there at the moment, and that repairing that pit yard and stuff. So we're going to do another drone flight when we've completed that work, and we'll show you before and after of that work as well. I think that's probably a better way to do it. So we will come to you with a drone flight, but probably at a couple of meetings' time. So in its place, we've just quickly whipped up some photos for you. This is just to show you the new canopy area which we're going to open in April, and it's to replace the makeshift public drop-off area that we've got operating at the moment. So it's set up to be, to give us some protection from the weather. It means that the recyclables and the materials that we're collecting won't get rain-soaked, and so we have better quality material. It'll be a much friendlier place. There'll be more staff around. It's consolidating a number of the activities, including the drop-off of hazardous waste. We've now got the ag recovery chemical container there as well. So, yeah, it'll be a much better facility, and really looking forward to getting it open. So picture number one, that just shows the entrance. The reason we've used the nice big blocks to create a channel is to slow people down, because it is quite tight when you get in there, and we're quite happy about that. We want people to go in there and be very cautious and slow down, because once they stop and start unloading, you've got vehicles and people on foot all together in the same area. So it's just to make sure everyone slows right down. The second picture, number 2, in that just shows you inside the canopy. Shows you basically how the bins will be set up. They can be emptied into from both sides. There's 3 laneways that are set up. Each laneway's got slightly different purposes, and it's all well signed. We've got signs up, and I think that you can see one on the top left-hand corner of picture 2. And then if you go right through to picture 5, you can see the setup of the lanes there with, that's an earlier picture, and it's got the 3 signs sort of identifying how the lane system works. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that. We are getting some newer bins which will be easier to use, not quite as big as the great big grunty ones that we have been using, but they also have lids on them so that if we do get any wind, and we've actually noticed that when we have had windy days, it's much better and under there already. But we've designed it so that we can close full bins and not have stuff flying around. So we're hoping that when we do get windy days now, we'll be able to keep this area open for the public. And we're sort of also looking at other ideas around so we can keep the pit open as well. So going forward, yeah, we're slowly, pulling this together. We just need to get all the other pieces in place. So yeah, picture 3 there, again, it's just another view looking back along that middle lane. And then number 4, that's the agrochemical container. So anybody with agrochemical containers can come in. Part of dropping them off is our staff are part of the agreement is we're meant to check that they're triple rinsed. So we've got a table set up there. Staff will just check them before they go in the container. Yeah. And then 5, that's just, that's that view we just quickly looked at before. If you just notice there now on the right-hand side of that picture, you can see some timber stacked up there. We've pulled that out of the pit. It's like brand new channelized timber, and it's just come in various loads and things like that, but it's really good quality material that can be resold and go back out to the community. If you're going to make a doghouse or just simple things like that, it's perfectly okay for that. We want to be able to do a lot more of that sort of stuff, and so when we talk about the reuse shop, that's kind of where we want to get headed. We want to actually be able to take a lot more out of the stuff going to landfill and get it back into the community. And the last picture there, number 6, that just shows you the exits. You exit and you turn right and you go down between the education centre and the existing rear shop and back onto the one-way system again. So this, one of the good advantages about this setup is it's going to remove some of that confusion and congestion that we've got at the moment when you first go in to drop recycling off into that yard. Yeah. So yeah, that's it there. So yeah, if you've got any questions on that one, yeah.
Councillor Reveley?
Yeah, thanks. Like the timber sales, does that run through ADC or Enviro Waste? Who's the personnel that runs it, and where's the money go?
Yeah, so all of the revenue for anything that's diverted and that stays with the contractor, and that's to incentivise them to pull more and more out. So yeah, that kind of dynamic works really, really well. What we have got written in the contract and what we want to achieve is to get actually a community group subcontracted to the main contractor to run the shop, because if that's their passion, those groups that's their speciality as well. So if we can get a really good community group in there, whether it's the Salvation Army or Habitat for Humanity or one of those other big charities, and that we stand to get some benefit coming back into the community through those channels.
Second part, memory's not as good as on this wee part. So is that building leased to Enviro Waste, or is it owned by us and gifted to them?
No, all the facilities belong to council, and through the contract we allow them to use it. And by allowing the company to use the facilities, reduces they don't pass those leasing costs back on through the contract. So it's just a nice simple way of reducing the contract price.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. And from that, the more we can recycle, obviously, and the more people use it, the less we send to Cape Valley. So there's an end saving there as well, isn't there?
Absolutely, and what, I'm really keen to go further and further down that track and reduce our we're spending about $1.8 million on Cape Valley at the moment. Yeah.
Damage to the old landfill, most of it has been in the newspaper explaining. If any questions to Mr McCann, he can...
Through the chair, I can just give you an update. We will be having a meeting with the relevant stakeholders, ECAN and the Mountain Bike Club, and discussing the way forward and opening the lines of communication so that we hopefully don't have any issues like we had before. We can only do our best and just communicate and meet and discuss the issues that we've had.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. It's noted in the report that it has been completed to a standard that suggests the builders are experienced at track construction. Do we have any notion of who the track constructors might be? And is there any chance of getting any compensation from them, particularly thinking about the planting that was ripped out as well?
If I could get someone who witnessed it to come forward and put their name against that, then we'd definitely go down that track. But that's very difficult to do to get proof.
Councillor Brahm.
Oh, sorry, it was the same question.
Councillor Ronson.
Thank you. I was very pleased to read eventually that an amicable solution was found that the track could be still made to be usable, especially as the club had events coming up. Thank you, Mr McCann.
6.63, solid waste contract. Councillor Price.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Chair. Craig, Councillor Malcolm and I were earlier this week at a Grey Power meeting, and we were asked again about what might be the prospect of green waste bins. Can you update us on that?
I guess that that's something that if you really want me to look into and come back to you with, then give me the instruction and we'll do that. Like at this stage, EnviroWaste, they take the material that we take through the park. The McLaren Contracting who now runs Wastebusters, is also taking a lot of green waste, and there's now an agreement between those two parties to work together for a period of time. I also know that EnviroWaste are very open-minded about actually doing work with some of the bigger processing companies and things in the district, so that may change going forward. If they were able to find a commercially viable quantity to work with, then they may very well just enter the market off the bat and do like an organics bin, in other words, not purely green waste, but it would include food waste and putrescibles and things like that. And that would be good news for the district, and if that happened of its own accord, well then that's a good solution too.
Councillor Ronson.
Thank you. Can I ask Craig a question, just not relating to to waste collection, but I've just been approached by residents of Graham's Road, Craig, that don't get the red bins and the recycling, the rubbish bins, struggling to understand why they can't be on the rubbish collection when it goes to Lake Hood and goes right past their gate. I can't recollect in the earlier discussions when it was set up as to where the boundary stopped, but now that we do collect at Lake Hood, they're asking, is there a chance that they could be on the list for rubbish collection? These are the outside Graham from Grove Street down.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those questions, where do you start, where do you stop? The numbers were done on density, sort of the time between pickup points. And so that stretch of road didn't fall into that. And then if you include that, then the side roads say, well, why don't you come down here? And then you start moving into territory where your collection points are so far apart, it slows everything down and becomes inefficient. Again, if you instruct me to sort of look at getting that priced up and including it in the contract, well, then we can do that. But yeah, the initial numbers didn't stack up.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yes, through you, Mr Chairman. Craig, I see we've got this litter bin renewal program, these solid powered compactor bins. Do you think that's adequate, the number that we're putting in at the moment? You don't think we should have some in the township, in Ashburton town?
I think I've only got the 4 to start with because they're quite expensive, and I was looking at pinch points, and we do have a small handful of pinch points around the district. So my plan was to definitely deal with the salmon site because we have to deal with that. You guys are really well aware of the pressure that comes under. We've also got a pinch point here in town with our in here, and same at the Hines toilet. Now, all along that State Highway 1, and the Domain toilet as well is another spot where they stop frequently. So there's that one, and then the other spot is opposite the takeaway bars in Methven. So that's where the 4 are going. And they're a good little tool. They will swallow about 17 times the amount of rubbish than a standard litter bin. So when you get those high pressure weekends and that, it doesn't mean we have to send a truck out just to do a couple of bins. We're saving money that way.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Water capital projects. Welcome back, Andy. Any comments about the projects listed there under 6.73? Councillor Revley?
Yeah, the Ashburton Relief Service, the river crossing and the pump station, will they be 2 separate contracts?
Through the chair, yeah, they're currently structured as two distinct contracts.
6.8, drinking water. Obviously, things are still up in the air regarding the government and the 3 waters. Local government New Zealand is doing its best to maintain councils, or the present city and district councils are involved. Whether central government overrule it, and they are talking about mass amalgamation, so whether it's to our detriment or our advantage, we don't know at this stage. Laboratory changes. It's good to see that we can test our drinking water here. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask, can locals use that as well to get our bore water tested?
At this stage, we've got a service we can provide our own supplies, and we also do some monitoring of rural supply or private supplies. We're not offering a commercial service at this point other than that. There are labs available that will provide full chemistry type testing as well, so that tends to be, yeah.
I was going to ask, because people ask us, how do you get in contact with, is it Hills Laboratory, and are they in town here, or?
Well, certainly I know Hills have a presence. I think there'll be others as well, so we shouldn't just single out one.
Yeah,
but,
I know,
so there are other services. There are other seed labs that will also provide water monitoring as well. So there's one of those in the industrial area, as I understand it.
Thank you.
Beach Road water main, we've already discussed that. Raising of bore heads, have we actually started the contract yet? Has it been let, Andy, or where is it?
Yeah, so we have an agreement with ACL, so they're currently doing a lot of the background work on that. And the only reason they haven't really started now that we've got the consent, is that our demand's still a wee bit high, so we just want to wait until things ease off. It's really just weather dependent now.
6.9 wastewater, I see the filters arrive for Ocean Farm. Hopefully we'll get a report once once the trial's underway, to see how it's going. 6.10 stormwater. No comments. Construction phase stormwater discharge consent, Ashburton Business Estate. District water management, surface water strategy. Isn't that what we've been Where does that sit, Andy, to what we've already discussed?
Well, I think you'll probably be revisited at some stage.
Councillor Price.
Well, if we look at the first point there, identification of cultural values and recognition of cultural sites, we just walked all over that one. We did. It went down.
Righto, 6.12, roading. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mr Firth. It would be nice. Talk to your manager. He might be able to do it for you. Anything you got to add regarding the maintenance and renewal contracts? It's the end of April with our LED lights. I've got one question. Fulton Hogan are using hot mix on some dig outs, which it's very smooth and nice. Have they decided to change their material, or why are they doing that, do you know?
My understanding would be that they're trying to hold the particular dig out for a period of time prior to sealing. So it will finish with a seal coat, I would imagine, at the end, because part of the dig out situation is to leave the final surface as close to the surrounding surface as possible.
We came down the Lismore Mayfield Road yesterday on the bus trip, and it was, the dig outs were, the new dig outs with hot mix were extremely smooth. Councillor Rollinson?
Thank you. Just last time we met and discussed roading, someone from up country announced that a road had been sealed without any preparation work done, and Brian was going to look into that. Was there an outcome?
Through you, Mr Chairman, it was Holmes Road, and we were doing the seal back from Barker's Road, and it was only 100 metres, and it was prepared properly and done properly.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, and I can just comment on that. I think we saw the ACL vehicles there and jumped to the conclusion, but now it's all been done really well and it looks good.
6.12.2. Is it operational, Councillor McMillan, is it underway or operational? Or?
Thank you. They're definitely working on it, and they have given us the date of the 12th of April, and I think that is because 1 or 2 days after that there is an event in Methven with a whole lot of electric vehicles coming through, so it sounds like that they're working towards that date.
Gravel pit clean-up updates. Believe the council officer that was working on this is leaving us. Will you have somebody that, has he left his report, or will you have somebody to take on his work, or what's going to happen there?
Through you, Mr Chairman, the officer concerned leaves as of tomorrow, and his replacement is being advertised at this moment.
Unsubsidised roading. Winslow Road is good. Are we going to seal some of the gateways? They've had preparation, but they haven't actually got the seal on them.
My understanding is that yes, they will be sealed. We're still getting around to that.
Footpaths. I see we had a letter of appreciation from somebody on Harrison Street, which is good. And they've also said that the soil that's being used is brilliant. And so it's good to get a kudos instead of complaints about what's happening regarding our footpaths. They're doing a very good job. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you, yes. And I did go for a drive down Harrison Street to specifically have a look at the new contractor working, and I must admit, they're very neat and tidy while they're working as well. They're not obstructing the road in any great manner, and it looks like they're doing a very good job, so.
Footpath extension, Methven Chertsey Road. Councillor McMillan, any comment?
No, but the grass is growing, so it's all good.
Hasn't got any weeds in it. Footpath spraying program. Contract, Councillor Rollinson, could you just speak into your speaker? They can't hear you very well.
My question was just going back to roading. Has Poplar, with the unsubsidised money, has Poplar Road been completed?
Through you, Mr Chairman, no, Poplar Road hasn't been completed at this stage. ACL are currently there. They started approximately 2 weeks ago and been doing swale or berm work. I'm not quite sure exactly where they're at, but certainly won't be complete until pretty near the end of this financial year.
Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm?
Yes, Brian, just at the Grey Power meeting on Monday, they asked about the spraying of lichen on the footpaths. What's the product used? No idea?
I've got no idea of the actual product used. I know that it's a completely different product to what they use for normal spraying of the vegetation. They do it, I think, once, possibly twice a year, and that's all I know at this stage.
Thank you.
Contracts awarded. Upcoming tenders or vandalism. I see February road signs spiked a bit. Did we have a bit of an outbreak? I think we did in some parts of town. There was quite a lot of giveaways knocked over and Methven Community Board, there is a request there. Councillor McMillan.
Yes, thank you. You've probably seen in the Methven Community Board minutes of our meeting that a report from Open Spaces be prepared on the status of the large trees at the Methven Cemetery.
Do you want a motion? Or
I
do-
think we do, don't we? Is that right?
Correct, if that's correct, that's
Yes.
what's required, yes.
Yes, thank you.
You move a motion that
So I'll move that motion.
Councillor Price seconded. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, carried. 619. Only thing, could you add my name, please, to the District Road Safety Coordinating Minutes? I attended that meeting too. I'll be also present. No comments?
If I can just add, I think we did discuss this at the last service delivery meeting. We only meet 4 times a year, so this was a February meeting, February the 5th, and our next meeting is 7th of May.
The first one I attended, and I found it quite worthwhile actually. There was some quite good discussion.
Well, we have a good attendance, and I think that that makes a difference.
Councillor Malcolm?
Just comment that Selwyn, and we've talked about it before, Selwyn's lowered their speed limits to a lot of their roads. Maybe to Brian, to Neil, is there any chance of this happening in Mid-Canterbury? I know we said before that we're waiting for to even those numbers, that they have the even numbered speed limits, but like NZTA are doing, but have we got any rollout with lowering speed limits on our roads?
Through you, Mr Chair, there's a report coming to the Finance and Business Support meeting next week, and that'll be discussed there. But realistically, at this stage, as I mentioned earlier, we're still in a state of confusion as to what is really required. We feel that it seems to be a off-the-cuff requirement based around
crash statistics, which, as we know in this district, are very random. So why should we bring speed limits down in such a random nature when from 2010 we've been going on the safety action policy, which works on the 4 principles of trying to work with the engineering side of things, the vehicle side of things, the road itself, etc. This just seems to be a knee-jerk reaction in one particular direction, and we're rather concerned from an engineering point of view.
Councillor Price?
Yes, thank you. Just in relation to speed limits, one issue that was raised by a constituent was Johnston Street and Tynwald going east from Grove Street. It changes at Grove Street, or just after Grove Street, I think, to 100 k's. Now, it only goes for about 800 metres altogether, and there are quite a lot of houses down there, including riding schools, and there's a number of children. The constituent was concerned that it wasn't suitable to be 100 k's. Is there any possibility of looking at that, possibly reduce it to 70 or even less?
One of the speed limits that we're not allowed under the new speed limit review is 70. It could come down to 60, it could go to 80. My answer to that at this particular point in time would be, basically, as it's a no-exit road, it's only the residents that are using that road. It's only the residents that want the speed limit reduced. Why can't they just drive a little bit slower themselves? I know that sounds rather picky, but that's in that situation. There's 2 others that we could change at this particular point in time, and that's Graham's Road from where it currently is just outside of the built-up area out to Grove Farm Road. And there's also Nixon Street going through to Hollands Road that needs to be extended a little bit as well. Our problem is, what do we make it? If we go 70, we've got to go through a consultation process with NZTA. If we change it at all, we've got to change it in relation to the new speed limit laws and our own bylaw, which means that we've got to go to full consultation with the district as a whole, which means that perhaps we should then be putting in these ones that they want out in the rural area to come down to 80 that we disagree with, which is from, for argument's sake, Maronan Road through to Simpsons Road. Why stop at Simpsons Road? Why go as far as Simpsons Road? The Orondarukai Gorge Road, the whole length of it being 80. Thompson's Track, the whole length of Thompson's Track being at 80. These are the things that they're requiring us at this point in time. Now, would you like to go to consultation on those particular speed limits? I don't think you would as a council.
Councillor McMillan?
Well, I had another one to add, but I don't know. And that's Barker's Road. Yes.
But outside of that, I think, but if we're looking at them, should we be looking at the speed limit thing in total, or should we just sit back and wait until we get a little bit more direction coming from the national area? We're taking the view at this point in time with our Iraqi partners that we sit and wait till we get good direction. Now, I know that Selwyn have moved for 80, but they've got good reason. The ones that they're working on are the ones that link Rolleston and Christchurch, and they are quite narrow, and yes, it makes sense that they've become 80, and I think the population in general would agree. Ours, I think you'll find that the population in general would disagree for a large portion of them.
Councillor Rollinson?
Thank you. I've just been
Just
up
speak a
in...
bit
Yes. I've been
closer
up
into
in
your-
fist length in Hastings and Napier area and Havelock North, and always looking at roading. I noticed they've got a terrific lot of new roundabouts, but my comment was up there, I noticed a lot of 80k roads now, and a lot of these are new roadways that have been developed, but they're between the towns, and a large percentage, until you get out on the Napier Hastings Highway, are all now 80k's, and some of them are new roads.
No further comment? Councillor Lovett.
I would just say, just around Tinwald and that, just out of the borough, just on those little short pieces, I've got no problem with them coming down from that 100 to 60 k's, because I often go round the back to go home, and there's a lot of people out walking in their dogs round in that area, and school kids. And to me, I think it's a no-brainer putting those ones down to 60 and for a few hundred metres. It is really public safety, and we're trying to encourage people to get out and walk.
The dogs and the kids.
And the dogs and the kids.
It'll all come out in the wash. Councillor Price.
I was just going to say that with Johnston Street, not everybody knows that it's a, well, if they miss the, sorry, there is a no exit sign there, but most people see the 100 k's and they plant their boot, and you know, and then they suddenly have to brake sharply as well.
Well, declare the open meeting passed. We've got a brief. Somebody like to move? We go. Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Seconded, Councillor Brevely. We go into committee. All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried.
Switches off the video now.
The video.